Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight for the virtual launch celebration of Maya and the Rising Dark by Rena Barron. For this event, Rena will be in conversation with Dhonielle Clayton. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which the bookstore is located is the occupied, unceded, and seized territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux people. If you would like to learn more, one place to begin is by visiting native-land.ca. My name is Carly Nussbaum, and I work as the Outreach and Sales Liaison for Women and Children First. We are one of the last remaining feminist bookstores in the United States, so a big thank you for supporting us. Our physical bookstore is open again in a limited capacity, yay! But you can still order a copy of Maya and the Rising Dark and more from our website at womenandchildrenfirst.com. There's also a convenient buy the book box at the bottom of your screen. Events are a vital part of our store's mission, and if you're interested in learning more about our events each month, you can visit our website and/or sign up for our monthly newsletter. Coming up on October 13th, you can join us for a virtual event celebrating the launch of You Know I'm No Good by Jessie Ann Foley. Now, I have the privilege to introduce the authors who will be in conversation tonight. And just as a reminder, everyone is welcome to ask questions for the authors anytime using the Ask a Question box, again, located at the bottom of the screen. Dhonielle Clayton is a New York Times bestselling author of the Bells series, the co-author of the Tiny Pretty Things duology, which debuts as a Netflix original series soon, and the author of the forthcoming middle grade fantasy series, The Marvelers. She hails from the Washington, D.C. suburbs on the Maryland side, which so does my partner. They were very excited. She taught secondary school for several years and is a former elementary and middle school librarian. She is COO of the nonprofit We Need Diverse Books and co-founder of Cake Literary, a creative kitchen whipping up decadent and decidedly diverse literary confections for middle grade, young adult, and women's fiction readers. She's an avid traveler and always on the hunt for magic and mischief.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here.
Rena Barron grew up in a small town, Alabama, where stories of magic and adventure sparked her imagination. After penning her first awful poem in middle school, not my words, she graduated to writing short stories and novels by high school. Rena loves all things science fiction and fantasy, ghosts, and superheroes. When she's not writing, she can be found reading or brushing up on her French. Rena is the author of the young adult fantasy novel Kingdom of Souls, the first in a trilogy, and a 2019 Junior Library Guild selection. Recently, the film rights sold to Warner Brothers with Michael B. Jordan of Black Panther producing and Misan Sege from Belle writing the screenplay. So like so exciting, so many upcoming movies, film, TV shows that I'm gonna need to watch. Maya and the Rising Dark is the first book in Rena's middle grade contemporary trilogy set in Chicago. And I, for one, already cannot wait for the next installment. This book was page turning and engaging from the start. I loved being swept along in Maya, Frankie, and Eli's adventures as they explored their newfound abilities and fought against and in the dark. I, for one, am grateful I have Maya protecting Chicago. I am so excited to hear the conversation tonight. So without further ado, please welcome Rena Barron and Dhonielle Clayton.
Thank you. What an amazing introduction. I think, Danielle, we'll start by actually at the beginning and reading a little bit of story. Get a good feel for Maya, and then we'll jump into the conversation. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We appreciate you coming out, and let's start at the beginning.
Sounds good.
The day color bled from the world. T-5 days. 5 long and torturous days until school was out for the summer. Not a moment too soon either. My math teacher, Miss Vanderbilt, kept me in after-school tutoring the whole year. She said I was gifted, but to be honest, I had no clue what she was talking about half the time. My brain felt as lumpy as the vanilla pudding they serve in the cafeteria on Mondays. Practice makes perfect, Maya, Miss Vanderbilt chimed at her desk. Get to work. Yes, ma'am, I mumbled back as I stared at the chalkboard. Only the top of her red fro poked from out behind the tower of papers. If she didn't give so many quizzes, she wouldn't have a stack of tests to grade that stretched from Chicago to LA. Today she had me working on situational math, and my head hurt just thinking about all the steps needed to solve the problem. She had written a recipe for candy apples and the price of the ingredients: apples, popsicle sticks, sugar, food coloring, corn syrup. I had to figure out how much it would cost to make 50 candy apples. This wasn't really rocket science, but math took time and focus, both of which I was short on. Miss Vanderbilt got worked out about fractions and decimals the way my friend Frankie got excited about science projects. Now Frankie, she was a genius. She had the grades and IQ to prove it. But to me, math was about as interesting as watching paint dry, which was actually a thing I had to do for art class once. I glanced over my shoulder at the clock on the wall. 15 more minutes. Then goodbye school and hello weekend. Papa was due back from his work trip. I bit my lip wondering what he'd bring me this time. My favorite gift was the red and gold sash he swore belonged to the great Orisha Oya from my favorite comic book. Oya wasn't real, so of course the sash wasn't really hers. Still, it was pretty, and I wore it to school for a week straight. I dragged the chalk across the board, taking my sweet time. No way was I squeezing in another math problem before 4 o'clock. As long as Miss Vanderbilt heard the sound of writing, she'd keep her attention on grading papers and not on me. As I worked out the cost of 1 candy apple, a shadow fell outside the window. I was trying to concentrate, but something edged at the back of my mind. It was the same feeling I had in gym class the other day when we were stretching on our mats after track. I spotted something wrong with the ceiling, like it was splitting open. But when I blinked, it was gone. My gaze slid to the window and my eyes slipped out of focus. My vision faded in and out. The world pulsed like a heartbeat, getting bigger, then smaller, then bigger again. The birds in the oak trees stopped chirping. I couldn't even hear the hum of cars on the street anymore. The sound of the ticking clock on the wall vibrated in my ears. Seconds stretched into minutes. My anemia made me dizzy sometimes, but it usually didn't last long. I leaned my shoulder against the wall next to the chalkboard and squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for it to pass. At least it wasn't happening in the middle of something important again. Last week, my team lost a kickball tournament when my anemia struck. Most of the kids didn't blame me, but I still felt horrible. When the dizziness went away, I opened my eyes again and my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The color bled from the world like someone was sucking it away through a straw. The window was gray. So were the trees, the sky, and the school flag. At first, I thought the sun hid behind the clouds, but this was something else. Something was wrong. Black lightning etched across the sky like ripples moving on the surface of a lake. I snapped my head around to look at Mrs. Vanderbilt, my heart thundering against my chest, but she was hunched over her papers, frozen. Not frozen like a popsicle, but frozen as if time had stopped. I wiped my sweaty hands on my pants. Frankie would say there has to be a reasonable explanation, but nope, there was nothing reasonable about this. This was bad, really bad. Miss Vanderbilt, I said, my voice shaking. When she didn't answer, I blinked twice, unable to think. Then, as if someone waved their wand and put everything right, the leaves on the tree turned from ash gray to dull yellow to green. Birdsong poured into the classroom again. Cars droned on the street. Voices drifted in from the hallway. My goodness, Maya, Miss Vanderbilt said suddenly. I didn't mean to keep you late. I jumped so hard that the chalk fell from my hand and cracked in two on the floor. Leaning around her papers, my math teacher frowned at me. By the puzzled look on her face, Miss Vanderbilt hadn't seen the bleeding gray or the black lightning. She'd been in some kind of trance the whole time. If I told her what happened, she'd laugh and say I had a vivid imagination. I stared up at the clock again. It was now 4:15. 30 minutes had passed in what felt like seconds. Maybe I was daydreaming, and it was my imagination. I pressed my lips together, deciding to keep my mouth shut. A crash rang in the hallway. Both Miss Vanderbilt and I turned to the door. My friend Eli pressed his face against the glass, his fist ready to knock again. He smiled, his freckles standing out against his light brown skin. Miss Vanderbilt shook her head at him. Before she could dismiss me, I shrugged into my coat and threw my backpack across my shoulder. My math teacher squinted at my unfinished work. We'll continue Monday. Yes, Mrs. Vanderbilt, I grumbled and jetted into the hallway where Eli was playing with his phone. A few other kids were in the hall too, coming from extracurricular activities or tutoring, or, like Eli, detention. He had a knack for getting in trouble. This morning, he put a frog in our English teacher's desk because she gave him a C- on his paper about famous ghosts. She couldn't prove Eli did it, but he doubled over laughing when she screamed, so he got detention for that. Eli glanced up from his phone and frowned. Was tutoring that bad? I sucked in a deep breath. I'll tell you later. Once outside, Eli and I stood with a group of kids waiting to cross the street. But Zane, the crossing guard, and his bloodhound weren't directing traffic. Instead, he was talking to Principal Ollie, whose gray suit and yellow tie were impeccable. Some parents had trouble remembering Principal Ollie's pronouns were they and them, not him or her. But everyone I knew got it. What's his malfunction? An eighth grader whispered to his friend. I couldn't tell if he meant Zane or his dog General, who was howling at the sky. The crossing guard's hands curled into fists at his side as he said something too low to hear. I wondered. No, I hoped he'd seen something too. No way was I the only one who saw the world turn gray. If he'd seen something, then that meant I really hadn't lost my mind. Principal Ollie patted Zane on the shoulder, and he winced and waved for us to cross. The hound stopped howling and wagged his tail. On the way home, I broke down and told Eli everything. He bounced on his toes the whole time and asked me so many questions that my head spun again. Did you feel a cold spot? Eli asked, like when there's a ghost around? I shook my head at his latest question. I can't remember. Did you sense a new presence in the room? We cut across a vacant lot covered in trampled weeds between two buildings. Some of the kids from Jackson Middle's soccer team, the Jaguars, were dribbling and passing a ball between them as they took the same path. No, I answered, still trying to make sense of what I'd seen. We ducked out of the way of a man speeding down the sidewalk on the sky blue divvy bike. He rushed to the rental station next to us and shoved his bike into an open slot. Looking at the row of bikes, I kept expecting to see a smudge of gray or black lightning, but everything was as it should be. You know there's a bike lane, right? Eli yelled at the man walking away. Glancing to my feet, I said, you think I'm making this up? Eli adjusted his backpack straps. Heck no! Earlier this week, Priyanka said she saw two crows talking to each other. If something weird happened, people always told Eli he was the king of weird. What do you mean talking? As we crossed Ashland Avenue, cars honked their horns and traffic stood bumper to bumper. People coming and leaving the shops on both sides of the avenue were as loud and noisy as traffic. The way we're talking now, Eli said, a goofy look on his face. I swallowed the lump in my throat. What were they saying? Eli shrugged. Priyanka said they spoke in the language she'd never heard before. What's your theory? I asked. Sometimes ghosts can inhabit the bodies of the living. Eli grinned as if he was waiting for his moment of glory. I guess they would have wanted to inhabit human bodies, but hey, wandering spirits can't be choosy. Priyanka showed me the video on her phone. For a second, you can see the two crows facing each other, then the screen turns gray. Even the sound went out. Gray? I asked as we passed a corner store. My eyes landed on the empty crate against the barred window. That was Ernest's spot. He was always around after school, tapping his foot and playing the harmonica tangled in his bushy beard. Not seeing him was one more strange thing to add to an already strange day. Ghosts seemed unlikely, but at this point, they were better than an alien invasion. Have you heard of anything like this before? No, he said, his voice hopeful, but I'll do some research this weekend. We stopped in front of his grandmother's 3-story gray stone building. Jayla, his little sister, knocked on the window on the top floor and waved at us. She and Eli shared the same freckled face, light brown skin, and hazel eyes. I waved back, and she poked out her tongue at Eli, who grinned at her, and poked out his tongue too. Are you going to tell your parents? Eli asked. I shrugged. Maybe later. I didn't want to worry Mama. Besides, maybe none of it was real. After listening to Papa's stories about his adventures all my life, maybe my imagination was as wild as his. I wouldn't tell my parents for now. That was my first mistake of many more to come. Had I known what lurked in the shadows that day, then maybe I would have made a different choice. So that is the end of chapter 1 of Maya and the Rising Dark and the beginning of Maya's story.
Thank you for leaving us on that cliffhanger. I mean, I know what's happened because I've read the book, but everyone should read it. And you're going to be very, very stressed out by what Miss Rena Barron did in this book. So first of all, I'm super excited. Sorry for my voice is a little weird. I'm a little congested. But we're going to do our best. I love this cover. I love that you're doing middle grade. So we're going to dive right in.
Yep.
First off, talk to me about Miss Maya. How did the story come to you? What was the inspiration? And is little Maya very much like little Rina was in that small town? I want to know what you were like at 12.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a lot of inspirations there behind Maya and the Rising Dark. And I would start by saying that, yes, Maya is very much like little Rina in that she loves superheroes and she loves comic books. And her friends are a little bit like me too. We'll get to that. But what I wanted to do, what the inspiration was, is that I didn't see a lot of books growing up with kids that were Black or people of color who were just kind of enjoying their lives and being superheroes and being the center of their own story. And stories that weren't necessarily about oppression or like, all the bad things that happen, because we're multi-dimensional, right? We're multifaceted. There's much to our stories. And I wasn't really seeing that in middle grade. We are obviously changing so much now. There's a lot of great stuff that's coming out, but there still needs to be more. There's a lot of work to be done. So for me, writing Maya's story and the inspiration of Maya herself was, I wanted something that I lacked when I was 12 years old, to have a story about a Black girl who was fierce and a hero and just like doing all these amazing things that I just never saw in books. So that was the inspiration to kind of write Maya. And I chose to write her as being in Chicago. So I live in Chicago. I love Chicago. But Maya's neighborhood is inspired by a neighborhood that I lived in at one point in my life. And I remember particularly one summer, a lot of like not great things were going on in the neighborhood. There were shootings, like people died and all this awful things were happening. And I remember thinking, yes, those things are happening, but that is only one side. That is only one facet of everything else that's going on. What about your neighbors who, talk to you as you're sitting on the stoop outside, the barbecues, the ice cream truck, the people who are looking out for your house when you're on vacation? Like, all of this community was there, but all I saw on TV was this one side of what was going on. And we get it. We know why news report kind of the dreadful things. But I remember, like, all the mornings I would go and do my rounds in the park, do my little laps in the park, and go to the corner store and buy avocados. As anyone who knows me knows, I eat avocado every single day. The weirdness, I know. But, like, none of that was there. And none of the community that, I was used to in that neighborhood, I didn't see that on TV. I saw, we only talk about this neighborhood when there's something bad happening. So I wanted to put Maya's story model after that neighborhood, and to think and to point out some of the things that we don't get to see, the community and the family and the love that's there, and how everyone's looking out for each other. And that was kind of the biggest inspiration for Maya's story, is that we don't get to see that so often in books, with people of color. And I wanted to write a book about that. And I just went crazy and just was like, I'm just writing this story that is, in a sense, a fantasy for me to, like, live out what I didn't see as a kid.
Right. This is a book that we needed. This is a book that we needed for so many reasons as young readers, to fill our imaginations. And when you were talking about how, unfortunately, I mean, we do need books that are about those tough topics, like you said. However, we also need to show that we are more than just what is happening to us and what has systematically and systemically happened to us, that there is joy, there is love, there is magic. And we deserve to be able to save the world. I think I would have been a very different young reader had I gotten to meet Maya when my imagination was growing, when I was figuring out how much I was obsessed with fantasy. I was looking for myself. I was looking for characters like Maya, who come from Black families, who are brown girls, who just are surrounded by lots of different kinds of kids. So I am just so excited about her and her adventures, because you are giving us something. We need balance. We need balance.
I think it comes down to is
I love her.
We've had such a single narrative. And I think there is a danger in that. If every time you're seeing Black kids in books, it is, trauma or oppression or brutality, then what is the picture that we're painting? I think a little bit of that can be insidious as well, and subconscious. And we've got to we can't do that. We've done it. It's been done in publishing and book publishing for years, and we've got to change that. Because we don't want another generation of kids growing up not seeing themselves in books. And Dhonielle, I remember one particular moment in my childhood when I was reading, and I didn't see myself. Like, I remember truly stopping in the middle of reading and thinking, there's never anyone in any of these books I love, and I like you, I grew up on loving sci-fi and fantasy. And there was a moment of just clarity where I felt so alone and so sad when I realized that there are never any people like me in these books. I remember having to feel like I related to the brunette in the story, because that was the closest I could get.
That's the closest we could get, was dark haired. That's right. And I was like, okay, then maybe she's Black. She got dark hair. Maybe she's Black. No. Right. Yeah. Like, and it was just, we were so desperate for some sort of representation. And it's just, what I'm loving about you and what you're doing is that you're building, and what I'm telling a lot of Black authors that I want them to do. I'm a book bully. Okay. I need us to build literacy bridges from picture books to chapter books to middle grade to YA to adult, so that our readers and readers who look like us never have to be hungry or thirsty to see themselves from the first time they learn how to read, because readers are made in the laps of other readers. So from those picture books to all the way through when they're reading by themselves to when they when we lose readers, which is in middle grade. That 4th, 5th, 6th grader, you don't get them, they're gone. And I want us to do what you're doing, which is give our readers who are starting to get more and more independent magic, Black girl magic. And I love it. I love it so much. And so, yeah.
Yeah, another part of it is too, primarily, yes, we want to write for ourselves, but I do think the single narrative has also created an environment where, like, if you're not Black, you're not used to reading about Black people who are saving the world or the center of their own story, who are magical. And there are cases where I feel like people are having a hard time understanding that and relating to that. And I think a lot of it is like, we've got to look inside ourselves and ask, why is it so hard to relate to a Black girl at the center of a story who's saving the world, who's magical? And those questions are not always easy, and it's difficult to kind of answer them. But I think that is kind of the bigger picture where we want to get to. Stories for ourselves, but also stories to be windows, for other people to see us in different ways.
I mean, if we can connect with the brunette in the story and do a self-insert, then everyone else should be able to see the humanity of Black characters and Black people and be able to enjoy our stories. I was just complaining about this online with a few other fantasy writers, Bethany C. Morrow, Elle McKinney, and Tracy Dion, about how we are reviewed. And I know, and we're going to get into this, about how our books are reviewed, and how when there are no white characters in our books at times, it's like, oh, 1 star, this has tropes, this has this. No one can actually access like our narratives. And it's super, super frustrating, and I'm mad about it. But first, before we dive into that, I want you to talk about the world and the magic. I want to know how you built it. I want you to tell everyone a little bit about, like, a hint without giving anything away, about this darkness that is coming, the dark, and then Lord of Shadows.
Yes.
Tell us,
sure.
please.
So anyone who knows me, who's read my YA, knows that I love dark books.
Yes. Kingdom of Souls. Amazing.
Yes, that's my thing. And so what I wanted to do with the world building here, I also like kind of the gray characters and kind of like there's no true good or evil, but there are some, but there's also the gray. So when I first kind of thought of the magic for this world, I actually did a sort of world building Bible of sorts, because I wanted to think about this world from and I do this quite a lot, and I think it's pretty common with fantasy writers, but I wanted to start at the top level, like the universe. Actually, that's where I started. I started with the universe. I started like, there was a spark of light and the universe was born. And then
you went all the way back there, Rena? You like went all the way. Okay. Teach me. I've never done that before. Okay.
I've got like a whole like story saga of how it all began. But so universe, and the universe birthed the stars and the moons and all the planets, and in those came like the Orishas, and they are the gods of this world. They're also called celestials. And I wanted this ideal that there were more than just humans in the world. And so universe, seeded humanity on Earth, but there were Orishas who wanted to create their own beings, and they create the Darkbringers. And the Darkbringers are in the dark, and they're all scary. But the Darkbringers were kind of in their own world, and they advanced faster than humanity. And then so they were kind of destroying the seeds of humanity by mistake. Which, it's like a human stepping on an ant, I guess. You can think of it that way. And it got to a point where the Orishas we are going to separate these two people so that they both can thrive. And this is where the Lord of Shadows crawls from behind the moon where he was sleeping. And he kind of takes the Darkbringers under his wings. And he's not.
You love this. You love this. This is scary, and you love it. You're just relishing in all of this.
I love it. And so the Lord of Shadows, it's this person. He was sleeping for whatever amount of time, forever. And he takes the Darkbringers kind of under his wing, and then he feels that it's not fair that the Darkbringers cannot like inhabit all of the earth and stomp on the poor little seeds of humanity. Who cares? They're, it's a process of evolution. And so he wants to start a war. And so eventually the Orishas kind of trap him in the Darkbringers, and the Darkbringers should be totally fine, but the Lord of Shadows is not content with that because he wants war and revenge. And so there's this whole like arc about him trying to escape from the dark so that he can control the whole world. So that's kind of the scary part of it. And I think this is not a spoiler because it's on the back, but Maya's father is the guardian between our world and the dark. So he's the one who created this veil that's between so that both worlds can thrive. And when he initially created the veil, like there were hiccups, like Darkbringers die because of it. And I do think that's where I'd like to like play with, like, parents aren't perfect. It's this ideal that, we can't as parents expect our kids to elevate us to be perfect. Like we need to be able to admit when we make mistakes and being able to make up for them and be able to do better. And so that theme is throughout the book as well. But so eventually in the story, he's doing his little thing, protecting the veil. There are tears in the veil because the Lord of Shadows is trying to get through. And he eventually kidnaps Maya's father, who can kind of go back and forth between the veil. And so Maya is kind of left. She's kind of left, and she's the only one who can pretty much save her father. And no one else wants to go because the Lord of Shadows, he's the one. So in the beginning of the story, when we talk about like the draining of the color from the world, it's the Lord of Shadows. Like he can drain the color and the light from anything. So he gets people scared. Like people are squared up like, oh,
I mean, he's scary. Look what you've done. He's siphoning off the light. He's softening out the color, everything. Like, even though I love a good villain. So I do like him, even though like we're talking in the comments about how he probably just needs a snack. Like he just needs to get himself together. But I love a good villain. I like a villain where I'm like, you're wrong. But I can see why you might feel the way that you feel. And Lord of Shadows has a very interesting point of view on everything that's happened. And yes, I enjoy it. And I love that Maya has
to be angry.
Yes. And I like that you have this smart, talented little girl who has to go save the day.
Save her daddy.
And her daddy, which I'm definitely a daddy's girl. So I was like really feeling that. I was like, okay, yes, I would do the same, but I would be scared. I'm not as courageous as Maya, and my 12-year-old self was definitely just scared of my own shadow. So I love how brave she is, and sort of how you built this world and how you created both places and both spaces and the magic, because it feels both terrifying, but also like it's time for an adventure. It's time to go. But who came first? Maya herself as a character, or this world and the backdrop of the Orisha and the godlings and the, and the Lord of Shadows and the Guardians? Like what came first?
So the ideal of kind of Maya being this girl on the South Side, just living her normal life, loving her comic book, ready to go to Comic-Con for the first time. So that whole base of the character came first. And then I needed to understand, well, if she's going to discover that she has magic and, her father's the guardian of the veil, why is there a veil? What does that mean? And then so I kind of backed out of that to then say, oh, there's a veil because the earth had to be split in two because of the Darkbringers and the humans. So it really started with her as a character, particularly because, again, I wanted to write this story about a little Black girl who is into things that we know Black kids are into, but we don't see that on TV a lot, and we don't see it necessarily in books a lot. I mean, how many nerd Black kids there are? Like tons of us.
Right. But
And
we
I
like to
wonder,
sell one sort of narrative about what Black childhood looks like. And it never includes the childhoods that look like mine or maybe like yours or like Maya's, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. And then I kind of built a world around that.
Oh, I love this. I love that. And I love that one, Kingdom of Souls, and you have a YA series, and now you've moved into middle grade. And I want you to talk a little bit about, which I'm thrilled about because I just moved into middle grade as well. And we can chat about it. And I want to know why for this age group, what drew you? You love the darkness, honey. Let me tell you, from Kingdom of Souls, Ronnie is dragging you in the comments. Again, I agree. You truly enjoy a good dark and twisted situation, and I love it. I'm here for it. Yes, you are. And there is darkness in this, and I love how you were able to incorporate all of the things that you love in your YA work and this, but for a different age group, and it has just a completely different feel. So why middle grade? Why step into this new arena?
I think it's a lot with what you said before, getting the readers very early and making sure that, kids in this age group, that 8 to 12 is like such a special time in kids' life. And they're coming on their own. They're learning to think independently of their parents. And I kind of just love the idea of writing about that because I remember those days. I remember what that felt like. And I wanted to write a story that could reflect that and be fun and be energetic, but could be a little dark. I know, a little dark, but dark in a different way than Kingdom of Souls. Kingdom of Souls is more like, mostly for teens, and we have adult readers as well. But I think there's a level of understanding what kinds of darkness makes sense for a YA book, so a young adult book versus a middle grade. I think middle grade, there's a line that I don't want to cross. Like I want to make this spooky and I want to make it scary, but there has to always be kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. Like there is, lightness in the friendships between Maya and Frankie and Eli, and Maya's father and her papa. They're so close, and her mom is there. And she's close to her mom, and the cranky neighbors. So a lot of this really stems from this ideal that in real life there's darkness.
Yes.
Not everything is perfect. I think there's a way you can present darkness in a book where it doesn't have to be necessarily a exact replica of the things that are happening to us in real life, but still represents that same kind of feeling and that same journey that, kids that age are going through. So Maya's learning again for the first time, like my dad, who tells all these amazing stories about all his adventures that she doesn't think are real, but she finds out are, that he's not perfect, and what that means, and, what they're doing to try to make a better world. And so there's that. And it partly too is like at that age group, I think community and friendship is everything. And I wanted to write a story about these three friends. They're all into different stuff. So Maya's into comic books, and Eli's into ghosts and paranormal, and Frankie's into science and space and all of that stuff. Like, not a spoiler here, but I was into all of those things as Maya's age. So I just split out little pieces of myself into all of these characters. So that's like the little, like on the down low story. But I wanted to show, and particularly I purposely wanted each of those characters to have a very different focus of the thing that brought them joy in their lives. Because again, we talk about having that single narrative and what that, the effects of that. And I wanted to show like, hey, here are three little Black kids, and like they're into very different things, and they're good friends. And they're working together to solve a big problem, like save Papa and, stop the Lord of Shadows for entering the human world. It's like
just a small thing. They don't actually have that much to do. Just a small thing, like a little homework. Please save the world and make sure the Lord of Shadows doesn't come over here and terrorize.
Don't forget that math tutoring.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I love how much love they have for each other, and they don't always agree. And they, you know what I mean? They have to go through lots of different things in order to, you know, figure all of this out. But you've centered with a girl that we can root for, and we can watch her make mistakes, and we can watch her like triumph. And we feel so excited about her journey. And the magic is just really interesting. And so that's another thing where I'm like, oh, I just can't wait to get more and more pieces of this world that you've built. It's super cool. Also, we have to talk about this cover, because I gasped when you released it and put it online when it dropped. Oh my God. First of all, I want to know, did you have any ideas about what you wanted the cover to look like? And then talk about sort of, oh, she just looks so powerful. She looks so beautiful. I love her hair, everything. Talk about how it came to be. This part too. Love it.
I know. The little upside down Chicago.
It's so good. And her little shoes and her staff. Yeah.
So I definitely had a vision for this cover. And I wrote my editor and I said, like, I would love, like, the way I thought about the dark at the very beginning, I still think of this way. I think about like Stranger Things and kind of this upside down world kind of thing. So I always kind of thought of the dark being upside down Chicago. And so I kind of said, like, I'd love to see Maya and her little staff, and I love there to be some way to show the magic around her, and then to show upside down Chicago. And they just, oh my gosh, they took it and they ran with it. And Geneva, GDB, on Instagram, and I think she's also that on Twitter. Came back with initial concept and nailed it. Like, I was like, I want her hair to be like braids, something natural, because I knew that was like something that was important to me. And like from the first draft of this it was absolutely gorgeous. And it was really just filling it in after that. Like there was very little to be done. I feel very blessed that this cover just ended up being just the cover of my dreams and my little heart. And I saw book 2 cover. I can't share it, but I just very blessed by it. But yeah,
it's so powerful.
I know it's a little bit different. Like not all the time we can, get our perfect covers or be as involved. But this one, I got a chance to give my feedback, and what they came back with was just amazing.
I just love that she is the light, right? And that there's the dark around, but this little black girl right here, is the light and the color, and she's stunning. And I just think
pushing away the dark. That's what I always think about. It's like her light is pushing away the darkness.
And I think it's a metaphor that we need right now as our world gets darker and darker and continues to be in the dark. We need to tell kids, the next generation, especially kids of color, that they are the light. They are the ones that are going to beat back the dark, and they're the ones that are going to be able to save us, and that they've got to work together. And you've got your girl working together with her friends to get a task done. And that they might be kids, but kids can change the world. And I just love it. And I'm going to take a couple questions from the question box, because otherwise I'm going to like yak and forget to do it. Because, I can ask you 1,000 questions all the time. So I'm going into the question box, and alrighty. Oh my gosh. So from Samira, our beloved, said, Rena, I love that you set this on the south side of Chicago. Why was that important to you? You talked a little bit about it, but I would love to talk with you to talk more about how important the south side is, because that orange monster in the office is always talking about Chicago and the south side and the people of Chicago. And I want to know what the south side means to you, and like why set it here.
Yeah. So for me, the south side means home, and it means community, and it means people, and it means togetherness and love. So I have like amazing memories of my time there. And I didn't see that in books. And like I said, and so I wanted to bring that forth in this book. And I wanted to put it on display. I want it front and center. And, again, like we're also always hearing that the South Side is this, is that, the South Side is that. The South Side is a community. It's a thriving community of people who are looking out for each other and, are doing their best considering the disparities that have been handed down generation after generation. And we're still thriving and still doing all the fun things we can and still developing. And, I wanted that to be a part of the book. And I there's no other part of Chicago that I would have written this story in, because it would not have been authentic to Maya and her family and kind of the connection that's there. And of course, there are great neighborhoods all over Chicago, but this is the one that we don't hear about. This is the one that has so much life and light that's there that we don't get to see. And so that's why I knew it had to be, based on the neighborhood that I lived in there, and it had to be the South Side of Chicago.
And I love it. And I love that you remind everyone that there are people there. There are people there with families. There are people there with mothers, fathers, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, friends. And that just because you don't know about a particular place doesn't mean that you get to talk about it in a way that erases the community and erases the people who live there. And I love that you put this heroine right there. And she is a well-balanced, wonderfully loved individual who gets to go on an adventure, and she's from the South Side of Chicago, and that there are so many children that come from the South Side of Chicago that are just like Maya. And I love that you did that. Okay, here's another one. How did you choose which Orishas were in the first book?
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a big choice. I think mostly because the Orishas in the stories they're in disguise. They have human forms. And it really
can you tell everyone what an Orisha is in case somebody has no idea?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the Orishas are the gods in this story, and they're based off of the Yoruba religion of West Africa, which is actually not just West Africa anymore. It's also South American. It's also here in the U.S. So they are the gods, and they are the caretakers of humanity. And so I knew Maya's father. So I knew that her father was going to be Legua, and Eddie, his human name. I knew that because kind of the history of being a guardian and being kind of the messenger. So I knew that was going to make sense. But then the other ones kind of came out of the characterization of their human forms. Like, okay, these actually make more sense. And I think the balance was really hard. And I'm pretty sure doing editing, we had to cut out some characters for the first book. Well, it's Danielle, we get to put all the characters in.
Fine, they better show up in books 2 and 3.
They will.
And I know your editor because she was my editor too, so I will email her. I hope she's watching.
It really was about trying to find the Orishas that made the most sense and balance for book 1, but you will see more in future books. And the reason why I wanted the Orishas to be kind of like hidden in plain sight, there's this whole ideal of this divide of being, like Maya's family's descendant from, slaves, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's that loss of history. But what if that history is still with us in small ways and in simple ways, and the way we live our lives and the way our communities are run and the things that we say and the things that we do? And I wanted to make sure that was kind of reflecting right in the story. Not if these are the Orisha of old, these are the Orisha of my ancestors, these are the Orishas that are the reason I exist as well.
And I love that because it is in our ancestry, right? Those Orishas came with us to the shore and came with the others to South America and to the Caribbean. And I love it. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I have a funny question that I'm so excited to ask. It says, if the Lord of Shadows needs a snack, What kind of snack would soothe him? Make it good, Rena. Make it good.
Oh, licorice.
Licorice? Did you see that article about that man who ate too much licorice and he died? Look.
I feel like there's something there. Yeah.
There is something there. Licorice. I love that. Okay. Here's another one. I love how you explored some of the average Darkbringers who aren't a part of the war and how they engaged with our heroes. Without any spoilers, will we learn more about them?
Oh, wow. That's going to be hard. So, yes.
No spoilers.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
If I say more, it will be a spoiler. Yeah. So, yes, we will learn more about them in the dark.
Okay. Amazing. And then I have a question because I asked all the ones that had come into the question box, but we have like time for maybe one or two more, right? I forgot when the Sandman comes to take me off stage. And it's like 10 minutes, 5 minutes till, right? So I can ask another question. Okay. Okay, great. Plenty of time. I want to know this is a writing question, how you are able to plot your series and plot your book, like when you were figuring out your conflict, because what I love is that you have this big baddie, which is Lord of Shadows, but you also have other things going on. So like, talk to us about your writing process and sort of how much you plan, how much you sort of figure out on the fly, like what is your style?
Okay, I'm going to try to make this brief because as most people who know me deeply know that I love planning and world building and plotting and all the fun stuff that comes. So I'm not a pantser at all. That is not my style. I plot. So for Maya, what I initially did is wrote a synopsis for the story. I had the synopsis kind of beginning to end of what I wanted to happen, and so kind of played around with that and looked at the arcs within it, because there's there's plot A, there's plot B, there's your main characters and your side characters, and giving them like their own agency. So those are the kinds of things I thought about. And because this is middle grade, I also thought like, yes, there's the big bad Lord of Shadows, but these are kids. They've got bullies in their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They've got like little things that they've got to worry about. They're little in the grand scheme of the saving the world part. But those are the kind of things that I thought about. And like those arcs will kind of move through the series. This is the first of 3 books. But a lot of what I tend to do is a bigger synopsis of everything. I'll do a world building guide. I'll do like character shots where I just kind of like think about the characters. Okay, Maya, what's cool about Maya? She likes comic books and she likes the staff fight with her papa. She's in math tutoring. So you start to think about those character arcs for them, and then that kind of feeds into the plot. So that's how I usually kind of plot the larger story. And then when I get to the chapter level, I like to write a summary of every chapter ahead of time of what I think the arc would be. Very short, like.
Okay. I was like, Rena, this is intense.
Maybe about 2 to 5 sentences, and there is a mini arc there, right? We talk about like the 3 act structure. So in each chapter, there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's arcs that are in there. So what is the character development from beginning of the chapter to the end? What is the story development? How are these things moving forward? So I'm often trying to look at that for every single chapter. And then you look at it kind of for the overarching book. So I do a lot of plotting. I definitely will write something down, like synopsis and kind of these chapter summaries before I'll ever like write anything. I refuse to write without them.
I mean, it's helpful. And especially when you're plotting a series and wanting to know what I'm going to tease out over time. Having that architecture is important.
Yep. And
I learned
you have to start putting in those little seeds.
That's right. And I'm wrestling my middle grade series right now. And I'm like, oh, right. I have to figure out how to pull this through books 2 and 3. Oh no. And like making sure that I've done all of that thinking ahead of time so that I'm seeding the right things. So I don't get caught in book 3, like, oh no, what did I say before? So no, I feel you on that. Question for you about, aside from Maya, give me your other favorite character in the book and why. You have to pick one other one. Who's it going to be? I know you don't love all these characters. I don't even love all of my characters.
No, but it's still hard. I think probably Frankie.
Okay.
So Maya's science geek loving friend, and probably because I love science too. And Frankie's the kind of person who watched an episode of Universe and just be like in love. And that is me. That is like my thing when I want to like relax at night. Oh, let me turn on an episode of Universe and see what's going on with, the black holes and all that fun stuff. So I feel like Frankie's probably in some ways very similar to me, because I think there's also this like loving, science and facts, but also knowing that she really likes sci-fi too, but maybe she doesn't want to say it, but yeah, she does.
I love that. I love that you've splintered the things that you've loved the most and sprinkled them on other characters, because that's what makes them feel so real. I feel like they could walk out of the pages of this book and I would meet them and I would know them because you've given them such flesh and real desires that you're like, oh my gosh, I know that kid. Like, I know that person. And I love that you use that as experience. That's how you build. I build like that too. I also, from people who are mean to me, I put them in my books as well. When I was a teenager or when I was in middle school.
I think that's perfect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also just taking these little slivers of myself and putting them in the character and then wrapping new flesh and bones around that thing, I think makes for really good characters that you can relate to as the writer.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting. And to close us out, last little question, would you be able to survive your own world? Like, could you do what Maya is about to do? Because I would not. I would be cut from this team quick, fast, and in a hurry. They'd be like, you need to just go back home. You're about to make a mess of this adventure.
I know that's true. Like, they would be like, Rena, you sit on the stoop on the neighborhood, get the ice cream ready for when we come back, but you just stay home and let us do the job. I don't know that I would survive this world. The Lord of Shadows is pretty scary.
Right. I don't have what it takes. It's like I was the kid that would hold all the bags when people would go on the rides at, you know what I mean, at the amusement park. I'm the one that's not going in the haunted house. I'm the one that's like, I'll see you when you get back. I'll be right here. Like, I feel like I'm the person that'll be waiting for Maya to get home with her favorite candies, being like, you did it! Yay! Versus,
you got a role, though. I think that's important.
Yeah, my childhood nickname is Chicken Little. And so I was always afraid of everything. And so Maya is so brave. And I just wish I had this book as a kid. I really do. And I'm just so jealous that all the kids now get to have this book and get to experience this very cool world. And so what's next for you? We've got more books coming.
Yes. So lots of things, it feels like. So for Maya, book 2 is going to be out June of 2021. So just next year. It's called Maya and the Return of the Godlings.
Ooh.
You'll know what that means. I think that it kind of, it lays out.
Okay, I like this.
And then there will be a book 3, obviously coming in 2022. And then I've also got my Reaper of Souls, which is the sequel to Kingdom of Souls, that's coming February 2021. So I've got 2 books coming out next year. It's gonna be a busy year.
We stay ready. We stay ready. We're excited. I just can't wait to see what the next cover of this looks like, and the coloring, like what you're gonna do with the colors.
It's gorgeous. I cannot wait until I can reveal it on Twitter.
Oh my God, I stay ready. And also I just can't wait to continue to follow this kick-ass, wonderful, cool kid who I would have just been like, this is me. This looks like me. I'm just so thrilled that you're writing and you're doing this. And so I'm excited. And yay. It's 8:00 for me. It's 7:00 for you. So are we on time?
Yes. I wanted to say thank you both for this wonderful conversation. And thank you, Rena, for such a wonderful story. This was so great. You both are amazing.
Well, I love her and we know each other. And so it makes it easy. I was trying to behave, actually. I was like, oh, be professional with your friend.
You were good. You were good.
Okay.
We'll be bad offline.
Okay, that's right. Yes. I love it.
And a reminder to everybody, if you have not gotten the books yet, you should get them on the website. Amazing. Also, this video was recorded, so you can relive it all. The recording will be emailed to everyone tomorrow. Thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of your week.
Congratulations, Rena. Adore you.
Thank you.
Yay. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.